Well, good morning, everyone. My name is Ted Gardner, and I'm an interviewer for the Library of Congress Oral History Project, so capably run here in Cincinnati by our great public library downtown. And Dennis Daly, our historian and videographer, is part of our library's history department. And we're very, very happy to have with us this morning Mr. Walter Glas of Cincinnati. And Walter, where were you born?
Right here in Cincinnati.
You're native through and through.
Yeah, I've been
on the west side of town, or?
No, east side.
Okay.
I grew up in North Avondale, right near Xavier University.
Oh yes, oh beautiful part of town, I should say. Yeah, I should say. Where did you go to elementary school?
North Avondale to the 5th grade, then Avondale in the 6th, and then Walnut Hills 7 through 12.
Oh, I'll be darned. Did you happen to know Herb Heilbrunn and John Lear, the aviators that went to?
No, I don't think so. I know who you're talking about.
Yeah, they were in the 3rd grade together at Avondale. Well, those were remarkable times. Of course, we grew up through the Great Depression era and all that sort of thing. And
right.
So after Avondale, then high school where?
At Walnut Hills.
At Walnut Hills.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, wonderful, wonderful school.
Yeah.
Yeah, we have so many of our veterans went to Walnut Hills and to Hughes High School here, of course. Mm-hmm. What was your family like? You have brothers and sisters?
I had one sister.
Okay.
She's a little over a year younger than I am.
Uh-huh. Was your father a businessman? Or?
He was. He was in the wholesale fruits and vegetable business down on Plum Street near 2nd.
Sure. Which no longer exists.
That's right.
Wipeout.
Right.
Paul Brown Stadium.
The flood couldn't take him out, but eventually
I know.
the economy did.
Right, and the Castellinis.
Oh, well, right. I mean, I remember when Castellini was just sort of the same size operation that my father was, which wasn't too large.
And, so you grew up in that business, huh?
No, I didn't go into it.
Oh, okay.
My mother and father never wanted me to.
I see.
So I became a civil engineer.
Oh my goodness! Where did you get your college engineering?
At UC.
At UC, isn't that something?
Yeah.
Now was that co-op program in?
Yes, it was.
Oh, it was.
Yeah.
That's a remarkable program.
It's a wonderful program. It really is.
My goodness. Yeah. And wasn't University of Cincinnati sort of a pioneer in that?
They were. Yeah. Dean Schneider, I think, was the man who started the concept.
Right.
But it's a terrific program.
So I always like to ask people, there are seminal times in our lives, you know, like where were you on December the 7th, 1941? You remember?
Well, best I can recall, we were in the living room at our house.
Listening to the radio?
Had the radio on and
sure.
Got the news that way.
Yeah, yeah. That was a very, very common experience, and because we were all, concerned about what was going on in the world at that time. What class UC were you graduated in?
51.
51. Okay. So Pearl Harbor came along. You were not in college yet, right?
Oh no, I was a kid.
Yeah, right.
At that point, it was 41, wasn't it?
41.
Yeah. I graduated from high school in 44.
In 44.
So
I see. Okay.
3 years to go.
Very, very good. As you progressed through your education, what did you, with the world in turmoil all around us and everything, what were you thinking about? What were you looking ahead to?
You mean while I was in high school?
Uh-huh. And then into college?
Well, I think we were all concerned about what was going on in the world. But at the same time, I can recall being pretty much wrapped up in the affairs at high school, and
course.
it didn't really keep us from doing what we were supposed to do there,
Right.
which was get an education and have a good time and
Absolutely.
stuff. So,
I know it.
but you know, I think we all realized that when we completed our high school work, that the next step would be into the military.
So, class of 44, high school, then what happened?
I was inducted into the Army in August of '44.
Oh, you were?
Yeah.
I'll be darned.
I thought I was going to go into the Navy, but it didn't work out. I wound up in the Army and took basic training in Fort McClellan, Alabama for 4 months.
And in those days, of course, train travel was the main way to go places.
Yes, it was. Yes, it
And,
was. And
We all,
Union Terminal was still a
oh, yes.
active place.
Right. Yes, and we're very lucky that we still have that building, you know, it's a remarkable.
Well, you're absolutely right. I mean, it's a marvelous piece of architecture.
Oh, my
and,
goodness.
The way things tend to get torn down in this country, we're lucky that it's still there.
Well, you know, Cincinnati overall, I think, has a pretty good feeling for its past.
Yeah, yeah.
And as you, being an engineer particularly, are aware of the wonderful examples of architecture in the city here.
Yeah.
So off to Fort McClellan. Basic training, boots.
Yeah.
How did you like that?
I liked it. I mean, the whole thing was quite an experience, beginning with basic training. You know, when we started, well, younger guys were in halfway decent shape, but not in good Army shape, so to speak, because I can recall very clearly early on, we went on a 3-mile hike, and everybody was pretty much dragging at the end. But then before our 4-month training period was over, we were on a 30-mile hike with a full field pack, and made that in better shape than we did the first 3-mile excursion.
Absolutely. And you're aware, of course, as we look back on it, we're always, hindsight, we've got pretty clear rear view mirror vision, but the spirit of the nation at that time was so dedicated and everything.
Yeah, I don't think we've ever seen anything like that since, unfortunately.
I agree with you entirely. Yeah.
It made a big difference.
Well, it certainly did. Everyone pulled together. Everyone was dedicated. Though, of course, there were some dissenters and so forth, but that's normal.
Yeah.
So after basic training, there you were.
Well, it just so happened that basic training ended, and the week I was home was right from Christmas to New Year's, which was kind of weird in a way, because it was a great time to be home.
Sure.
But you knew that things were going to change.
Absolutely.
And I believe it was on New Year's Eve that we got on the train and headed east to get ready to sail across the Atlantic.
Where did you debark from?
It was Boston, I'm sure.
Boston?
I believe. Yeah.
So you were on a big transport, were you?
We were on the Isle de France.
Oh my gosh!
And
Wonderful ship.
well, yeah, but that's one of the things that sticks in my mind. It was a wonderful ship, but a couple of things. There was a lot of submarine activity. So instead of making a direct crossing, which I think would have taken around 4 or 5 days, we took a zigzag route. It took us about 7 or 8 days. It was rougher than a cob of water, and a lot of guys got sick.
Sure.
And then when I came back, I was on Little Liberty ship in June. And the weather was ideal, the water was calm, the food was great. It was the difference between the two crossings was just like day and night.
How about that? Well, yeah, on that great liner, I've read about
Yeah, it was quite a ship.
the liners and
Yeah.
the beautiful French.
Well, and I remember too.
Oh, good.
Well, the food situation was a combination of guys getting sick and adjusting to that. But then the stuff they put out wasn't all that great. And the ship was, well, we'll get into that. But when we got over to Scotland where we landed, we saw them unloading a lot of food off that ship that looked like a lot better stuff than what they were feeding us.
Yeah, that was typical.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, the conditions aboard the ship, of course, must have been pretty cramped and.
I guess you would say that, yeah, but
Well,
not intolerable.
Not intolerable.
And,
Well, that's.
well, they kept urging everybody to get up and move around and,
Sure.
and eat, and those of us who did adjusted after a day or
Right.
two. But there were some guys that just stayed in their bunks and
Just couldn't do it. Couldn't make it.
They
Yeah.
were a mess by the time they
Yeah.
got over there.
Yeah, that was so important, and of course, as we found out in our boot training, I was in the Navy, but you were imbued with a spirit of determination
Right.
and keeping yourself fit
Right.
and mentally straight. So you landed in Scotland.
Yeah.
Well, that must have been an interesting experience.
Well, yeah, it was, and then the train ride down through England to wherever it was we got on a ship to go across the channel. I mean, the countryside was so lush and green. It really it looked like a slice of heaven almost.
I'll be darned. Isn't that something?
Yeah.
Did you have any period of time in England before you went
No,
across?
Not really. No.
No.
My recollection is we
Yeah.
didn't. We got off the boat and got on the train, and then got off the train and got on the boat.
Right,
And
right.
Went over to Le Havre.
So now, what division were you in?
I wound up in the 106th Division.
106th Division.
And that was the division that really got beat up in the initial counteroffensive. Started the Battle of the Bulge.
Oh, yes.
They were an outfit that had been on, well, they had just come overseas, I think, in October of 44. And so they hadn't had any combat experience at all.
Right.
And the Germans probably were well aware of that. And they came right through where the 106 was. And 2 of the 3 regiments actually surrendered.
Really?
And the 3rd Regiment lost significant numbers, and there was a big need for replacements. So
Yeah.
that's what I was one of the replacements in that
Oh,
regiment.
I see. Now, this was an all-infantry division?
Yeah.
How about that? What kind of arms did you carry?
Well, I wound up being the BAR man.
Oh, Browning automatic rifle.
Yeah, the guy, my predecessor, was put out of commission shortly before I arrived. So they gave me the BAR, and it was not in very good shape. It was pretty dirty and cruddy looking. So they taught us in basic training how to take care of different kind of weapons, that being one of them. And I wasn't sure that I remembered exactly what to do, but I took it apart and cleaned it and got it back together again, and it worked.
Well, good. Oh, that's great. Well, you showed your training, and
Yeah,
that was terrific. As an engineer trained and so forth, or of course looking ahead to that, did you have any particular mechanical aptitude or anything like that?
Well, I guess I had some. I mean, I always enjoyed and did well in mathematics and stuff like that.
Sure.
So
Well, that's great.
I was kind of headed in that direction, I guess you could say.
How about members of your division that you were close to? Was this a division from a particular part of the country, or was it from everywhere?
My understanding, this division was formed when a number of the programs that the Army was running, where they sent guys to college, when those ended, a lot of the men became members of this 106th Division. They trained at Camp Atterbury in Indiana for a number of months, and then were sent over to Europe. And none of them had any experience prior to going over there.
You were all raw recruits, so to speak.
Some of the guys that I became close with, told me stories about how things were back in the States, and then what happened when they got over, and it was quite a mixture of things. I mean, some of them good, some of them not so good.
Yes, I'm sure. Well, you're mentioning, the college exposure. That ATP program was very effective.
Yeah,
I know that. And then, of course, later on, after the war, the GI Bill, which just changed our nation.
Absolutely.
It was so great.
It really did.
Okay, so there you are in England, and what were they telling you? What was going to happen?
Well, I guess that we were going to go to a place which turned out to be Le Havre, Belgium, where we would be assigned to our outfit. That was pretty much the extent that I can recall. We didn't find out until we got there what was going to happen next.
I see. And you went across the channel on a landing craft or what?
No, it wasn't a landing craft. It was some kind of vessel. I really don't recall the specifics of it.
Yeah. So then, let's see now. June of '44, October, December. So you got into Le Havre when?
Well, I got there in early January.
Early January.
I wound up either joining my outfit or being assigned. It was right around the middle of January when I joined my outfit. Yeah.
What was the weather like then?
It was like nothing I'd ever really been involved in before.
Really?
Yeah. Well, and we were in the Hürtgen Forest area.
Oh, terrible.
And there was a lot of snow. It wasn't unreasonably cold. I would say it was maybe somewhere in the 20s or so, but it was very foggy most of the time.
Right.
And it was
Conditions
kind of hard to get used to.
Sure, and cold ground and wet snow and all that kind of stuff.
But the funny thing was, not funny, but just sort of connected to that, right toward the end of basic training, this is in Alabama, we had a week bivouac, and the whole time the temperature was right around freezing, and it was raining most of the time. And it was just this cold dampness, and that was really worse than what it turned out the weather that we had over in Europe. And maybe it helped get us used. Used to it.
Certainly, I'm sure that was a very helpful thing, preparing you for what you were getting. So you got there. Now let's see. The mid January of '45. We'd begun to turn things around in the Ardennes.
Right. Yeah, things had kind of stabilized, and our outfit actually was in what they called a holding position. I mean, we really didn't go anywhere, but there was exchange of artillery fire, and we had scouting expeditions, the Germans had scouting expeditions, that sort of thing.
Right. Did you see the Germans? Did you see the enemy?
I never actually saw.
But you heard them.
I heard them, and
wow.
I was underneath some of the artillery bursts that they sent
Oh,
our
yeah.
way.
Oh, God's sakes. Now, a couple of the fellows that we've talked to who were there at that time talked about, one guy said, he said, I never was in a foxhole. I was always in a trench or in a revetment or something that had been a bomb crater or something like that, and jumping into muddy water and cold and all that sort of thing.
We were in foxholes. And,
You were in foxholes.
with logs over the top of them.
Oh, you did?
Oh, yeah.
Wow. Well, that was lucky too. Yeah, I should say. You said that your division was sort of a holding type of an operation. As time progressed, what took place?
Well, as far as I was concerned, two things took place. And I don't know whether the first thing really had anything to do with this incident, but one night we were under an artillery attack, and I dove into the foxhole and left my BR came into the hole with me, but it was up near the front, and I went to the back. And when the shelling was over, I looked around. I couldn't find the daggone thing. The next morning, I did find it. It was kind of buried, and it was all bent up out of shape.
My goodness.
And but shortly after that, I was reassigned to regimental headquarters, and they trained me to be a field lineman.
Oh.
Which meant that you went out and repaired the communication lines.
Sure.
And then after that, our regiment was moved back to an area near Rennes, France. The reason was that when we came across France, there was a rather large pocket of Germans that were isolated in that area. And there was some concern that they might try to join the Germans in their counteroffensive near the conclusion of the Battle of Bulge. So we were sent back there with others to try to make sure that didn't happen. Well, fortunately, they didn't try anything.
Oh,
so
good.
we were actually there until the war ended.
Oh, you were?
Yeah.
But you kept them in the pocket there, and
Well,
then, of course, did they
We didn't. We were there.
surrendered?
And there wasn't anything really that I can recall that that went on, other than the fact that we were there, and they stayed put.
Now, you made buddies, and did you have buddies that you had basic training with that you went all the way through?
Not into my outfit, but there were guys that went over to Europe that I didn't reconnect with after the war was over.
Oh, I see.
And
I see.
that, well, what was it? Something that happened that
Yeah,
that
tell
sticks
us.
in my mind that I found to be an interesting experience.
Good.
These are two guys. They're both from Cincinnati. And I was sitting in company headquarters one day, early fall, I guess it was, and unexpectedly they walked in. And the way it all came about, I found out, the one fella whose name was Lou Gallup, he was writing for the Stars and Stripes.
Oh, yes.
And the other guy, his name was Mel Peerless, he had been awarded the Silver Star, which is quite a
I should
high
say.
honor.
Third highest honor.
Yeah, and as a result of that, and also the fact that he was a big, good-looking guy, he was made a member of the honor guard at the Nuremberg trials.
Oh.
Mel was covering the trials for the Stars and Stripes, so they ran into each other. And I mean, Lou Lou was covering for the Sergeant Strike. And then in the conversation, Mel knew I was over there in Europe somewhere, so Lou was able to, with his connections, find out where I was. So that's how they found me. And then as an outshoot of that, Lou made an arrangement for me to attend a session of the Nuremberg war trials.
Really?
Yeah, which was really an incredible
You
experience.
sat there in that courtroom?
Absolutely.
Well, tell us about that.
Well, I mean, I was no further than, say, from here to that wall, from the box where all of the prisoners sat. And
Goodness sakes. Did you see Hermann Goering and people
yeah.
like that?
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
Good heavens.
Goering, Hess, and all of them were there.
Eichhardt and so forth.
It was just really an unreal experience to be that close to these men who had caused such
Had perpetrated
turmoil in
so
the world.
much. What was your impression of the jurists, the American or Allied judges and so forth? Did you?
Well, as far as I could tell, they were doing what they should do. I mean, there wasn't really anything that unusual that I can recall the day that we were there. But I mean, you got the impression that everything was being handled in a very straightforward manner.
Right.
And another thing I recall about it, when you sat down in your chair, there was a gadget on the chair that you could operate, and you had a set of earphones, and you could make adjustment to pick it up in whatever language you wanted to listen to.
Oh, I see. Wow, that was something.
So whatever was being said, you could get it translated
Sure.
in English right away.
How about that?
Yeah.
Did you ever meet, his name is Dolibois.
John Dolibois.
Yes.
Yeah, I know who he is.
Yes.
Oh yeah. I've heard him speak.
Sure, Miami
several
University
times.
and all
Yeah.
that sort of thing.
And he actually lives over in Evergreen, where we
Oh,
live
he's
now.
living at Evergreen
Yeah, he
too?
does.
Oh, isn't that interesting? Yeah. Well, that...
Yeah, he's really got an
he's a
interesting
remarkable
story
guy.
to tell.
Yes, he really is. Well, Walter, that's just amazing. So you were there for a whole day, were you, or just?
Yeah.
Uh-huh.
Yeah.
And did you come back again, or was it?
No,
or
it
what?
was a one-shot deal.
Yeah,
I think I had something like a 3-day pass, and
Okay.
so one day there, and the other 2 days I was visiting with my friend, and then
Sure.
back to my outfit.
Now, were you called upon for anything, or were you
No.
just an observer?
Just an observer.
I see. I see. What was your rank at that time?
I'm thinking it probably was around a corporal.
Corporal.
Yeah.
Good. Well, that truly is something, and it's something that so many people, know very little about.
Yeah.
The name, the Nuremberg trials, but a lot of people just don't understand what it
Yeah.
was.
Right. And, I think there always was, and maybe still is, some question as to whether these guys should be prosecuted, whether what they were doing was in line with military operations or not.
Right.
And,
Right.
but I think it was pretty well established that the ones, well, and the convictions ranged all the way from death by, I think, hanging to some of them were actually acquitted. And
Yes.
then in between, you had different length sentences given
terms
out
and so
depending on
forth.
exactly what they did. And I think the determination was whatever they did that was outside of the lines of acceptable military
Right.
activity.
Well, that's tremendously interesting.
Yeah.
Well, I know that your family and friends will be very interested in seeing this DVD that you're going to get from this interview and
Oh,
hearing all about it. Okay, so now that was in 45.
45.
And let's see, later in the year. That was what, after VE Day? Do you remember VE Day? I think it was in
Yeah,
June of 45.
Yeah, right.
Yeah.
Yeah, and
So you, getting to that part of the country, did you march a lot? Did you have to walk through the countryside a lot to get to where you were going, or were you transported by?
I mean, after the war was over?
No, before the war was over.
Oh, well, I'd say it was a combination of both, as I recall.
Okay.
I think that when I joined my outfit, as best I can recall, well, from Le Havre, Belgium, to the Hurkin Forest area, we were transported probably most of the way. But then there was a fair amount of walking till we finally reached the outfit that we joined.
Right, that's what the infantry was all about,
That's
I'll
right.
tell you.
That's right.
Good heavens. Well, that's any humorous experiences that come to mind that you can think of?
Well,
You know, fellows were so close together in
Yeah.
that situation.
yeah.
And
Well, what's coming to my mind is not necessarily a humorous experience. It was interesting.
Good.
Not too long after the war was over, they started getting things going for guys to take part in. One of which was a softball operation.
Okay.
And, so I think I was playing on the company softball team, and I did pretty well. And the guy that was managing the team ultimately became the manager of the regimental baseball team.
oh boy.
So I tried out for that, and I made it. And it was really a good deal. We were
Awesome.
put on detached duty, and our only assignment was to practice and play baseball. And
Wasn't
we
that-
traveled all over Germany, which was nice.
Oh, I'll
See the
say.
countryside. And then toward the end of the baseball season, I got a 1 week furlough at the on the Riviera in Nice, France, which was not too bad.
Not too bad. That's pretty good duty.
They maybe digressing a little bit. but
Sure.
that's all right.
Absolutely.
They put us up in real fancy hotels down there, and the French operated the hotels. They prepared food that was furnished by the Army, and it was strictly Army food, K&C rations. But it didn't taste anything like what it usually tastes. I mean, they actually made it taste really good.
Isn't that something?
And while we were there, there was a game played between the Mediterranean and European theater all-star teams.
Oh,
and
boy.
the game was played on what was a soccer field, and they had home plate tucked in one corner of the field. So, and we were standing. We were no more than 5 feet behind the catcher, and one of the guys who pitched for the European team was Ewell Blackwell. Now this was before he had come up to the major leagues. He was in the Reds minor league organization prior to going to the Army, and he pitched 5 innings that day, and struck out 13 of the 15 guys he faced.
Oh my gosh.
And we're 5 feet away, and if you remember Blackwell, the way he pitched,
the whip.
yeah, it was really something. And
Oh
so
my golly.
I wrote my dad and I said, "This is a guy we got to keep our eye on."
You bet. Now, did you get to connect with him after you came back and he went up with the Reds?
No, I didn't.
Oh, that's wonderful. What position did you play on the team?
I played the outfield.
Played the outfield. Oh boy.
Basically.
Well, and And being in Europe, and of course the Europeans not really familiar with the American game of baseball, that must have been kind of interesting to be able to show what baseball was like.
Yeah.
You
Yeah,
guys were real ambassadors.
Well, I guess so.
Yeah. Any other funny experiences or any of your baseball experiences?
Well, not a baseball experience, but not too long after, I guess after I got back from the Nuremberg trials, I had previously made an application to get into this college operation, you might say, that the Army had set up in Biarritz, France.
Oh.
And had you heard of that by any chance?
No, I haven't heard about that.
Well, it was really pretty extensive. They brought over teachers from the United States, and they offered a pretty complete college program. And the idea was for fellows who were interested in going to college when they got back, to give them a little refresher and get started. So this lasted, I think, something like 6 weeks. And,
boy.
They put us up in this fabulous place that had been built for one of the members of the French royal family at the time. And it was really very nice.
Isn't that something? What did you study there?
Well, as I recall, I took mathematics courses.
Okay.
And I think they had I know that they had a course of surveying that I took as well.
Did you have any exposure to the French language?
Well, maybe just a little bit. Actually, when I was in high school, I studied French for a couple of years.
Oh, good.
And, I guess I learned just enough to be dangerous. I didn't really know that much.
Had a few of the phrases, huh?
But then, when you got over there, there was a little communication
Oh, that's nice.
in French.
Some of the fellows I know that had that experience got acquainted with French families in their homes and so forth. And, you know, for that period of time and for young Americans who had never been out of their hometown, mostly, what a great experience.
Well, it was, and I think it had a lot to do with, well, as you say, exposing people to things that they hadn't been exposed to before, including people.
Yes,
You know,
that
people
was-
from different backgrounds.
Exactly.
And I really think that this had a lot to do with helping improve relationships
Right.
within our country.
Right, and and although I was never in the European theater, had any experience like that, I always thought a lot about it. I asked for transfers all the time, but the Navy would never transfer me. But to have that experience in a foreign land, and I would think it would have been very, very, very fascinating.
Well, right, and Europe is the kind of place where you can get to a lot of different interesting things without
Yes.
having to travel too far.
That's right.
So
You were writing history right
yeah,
there.
we had a lot of opportunities to travel around after the war was over, and that
Sure.
was nice. And matter of fact, the kind of letters I was writing home to my family, they were a little concerned that I was having too good a time and that I might not want to come home right away. And sort of on that note, I really, I don't know if enjoyed is the right word, but there was a
know what
lot
you mean.
about the Army experience
Yes.
that I really liked.
Yes.
And I was thinking very seriously of applying for West Point. I don't remember exactly what happened, but that never came about. But then when I got home, I was also seriously considering joining the reserves.
Oh, yes.
And my father didn't think that was such a great idea. And he wound up talking me out of it, fortunately, because if I had joined the reserves, I would have been in the Korean War.
Oh, yes, that's right.
Yeah.
Oh, that's followed up so closely after. I know that was, it was a terrible time, too. Well, okay, so you were there in Europe then. When did you finally leave Europe? What?
In June of '46.
In June of '46.
Yeah.
So you saw peace taking over, and by that time, of course, I think we'd put the Marshall Plan into effect.
It could be. I don't know, though, that I can honestly say that we were aware of what was happening in regard to the Marshall Plan, which, of course, ultimately was a very successful thing as far as the recovery of Europe is concerned. Europe, my recollection, Europe was in pretty bad shape through the time that I left. I mean, it was unbelievable. The extent of the damage in some of those cities, and that they were rebuilt the way they were is really kind of remarkable.
Sure. Yeah, and of course the war is such a terrible thing anyway, and not only the loss of life, the young men, civilians, all that sort of thing.
Yeah.
Did you have any experience with experiencing our Air Force? The bombers, the fighters, anything like that? Were you aware of the U.S. Air Force presence?
Well, of course I was aware of it. There was always a certain amount of resentment being down there on the ground.
Yeah, I know. What a difference.
But, I mean, having said that, at the same time, I certainly realized the big factor they were in bringing that thing to a successful conclusion. But I can't recall that our outfit was in any way connected with strategically with something that was going on that the Air Force was involved in.
What kind of equipment did you have? I mean, I'm talking about mechanized equipment, half-tracks, trucks, tanks, anything like that?
Well, our company, we were strictly foot soldiers, but our regiment did have what you're talking about. Okay. Yeah, I do recall that.
Right. The artillery, quite a number of fellows, of course, were in the artillery, which are pretty much behind the lines, but they were firing their big guns in support of the foot troops and so forth.
Right.
So you had stuff going overhead and everything.
Yeah.
Gosh.
I figure that may have something to do with these things I'm wearing today.
Oh, I see. Yes, a lot of people had that experience, I know.
Yeah.
Okay, so there you were, and in 1946, and they said you're going back. How about that?
Well, that was great.
Yeah. Do you remember when the atom bombs were dropped in Japan?
Oh, absolutely.
Where were you then, and what was that feeling?
Well, we were getting ready to go get on a ship to go to Japan.
Sure.
I mean, we were that close.
Yep.
And well, I think everybody, in a way, were not really sure they knew how to respond to an atomic bomb.
I know, it was so unusual.
Situation. I mean, it was something that was so different than
Yes.
anything any of us knew anything about.
Right.
So it took a little while to kind of absorb all of that.
Yes.
But then it wasn't too long after that that the Japanese surrendered.
Right.
And
Right.
in our
So
minds, that was the big thing.
That was the big-
That was good news.
I
And,
should say so.
I mean, there's always been this discussion about whether it was the right thing to do to drop those bombs, but I think that it's pretty clear the Japanese were not going to surrender, and that if we had had to invade Japan, the loss of life would have been far greater than what was experienced in those two cities.
Yes. And a lot of people refuse to admit to that today,
Oh yeah.
protesters and so forth, because we do know that the Japanese were so dedicated to protecting their homeland, they would have
I mean, they were fanatics.
fought ferociously.
Yeah.
Well, Walter, it's just you have lived through such a tremendous period of time,
Right.
and you've had so many wonderful experiences in history, like the Nuremberg trials and so forth. And then you're playing baseball. I can't get over that. I'm an old baseball player myself. I can't get over that. That must have been just
Well, and something else I remember in connection with that.
okay.
When this whole thing started, there were no baseball fields over there.
Of course not. You had to lay them out, and
Well, our outfit got a hold of a bunch of German engineers. And these guys apparently had been doing things during the war that were not in line with their engineering work.
oh yeah,
And they had a ball laying out this baseball field for us. And they actually made it. And it was really, when they got done, it was a first-class baseball field.
German engineering.
German engineers.
How about that? Yeah. Oh, golly. Well, besides Blackwell, did you see any other major leaguers to be, or anybody
Well,
like that?
I actually batted against a guy that eventually became a major league pitcher for, well, it was with the Cardinals for a big part of his career, Murray Dixon.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah, so that
Sure.
was interesting.
Yes, I should say so.
But, well, and back to this Blackwell story. Well, let's say the guys that I played with, I mean, some of them had professional baseball experience. Some of them
Semi-pro
were
and so
just
forth.
high school guys like myself.
Sure.
Maybe some had played college ball. But this all-star team that Blackwell pitched against, they were all guys who had been, well, they were professional ball players before they went into the military at minor league and major league levels. So they they weren't just,
Sure.
novices that
Yeah.
he struck out.
Right, I should say. Well, I know the Navy had quite a number of baseball teams like that around the
Yeah.
Pacific,
Yeah, right.
where there were bases like Pearl Harbor and the Philippines and so forth.
Yeah, there was a pretty extensive
I
program.
never got to see any of that. I was always at sea. But okay, so 46 coming along now. The war is over. You build up your points
Yeah,
for separation.
yep,
Got your ruptured duck.
yep.
Where did you? You came back on a Liberty ship, you say,
Right.
and
And that, as I said before, that was really a memorable experience, including, I remember when we came on board ship, they said, if anybody's hungry, go on down to the galley, and they had this big spread there, baked ham, milk. That was the first time I'd had milk.
real milk.
Since I'd been overseas.
How about that?
So we had a very nice trip back.
Well, that's wonderful. You came back to Boston or to New York, or where did
New
you?
York.
You came back into New York.
Yeah.
So did you get some time in New York before you came home?
A little bit, and it just so happened that my sister was going to college in the area, and she and I made arrangements to meet, and we met at the Polo Grounds.
Oh, for that.
That's the
How
first
about
thing I
that?
did when I
How
got back.
about
Saw a
that?
baseball game.
How about that? Oh, isn't that great?
Yeah.
Say, that old Polo Grounds, that was some ballpark, wasn't it?
Well, it really was, and
Coogan's Bluff there and everything?
And it was such an unusual configuration.
Yes.
I mean, the distances down the two lines were so short, and then center field was so deep.
Yes.
And we happened to be sitting out in the left field area. And I remember it took me several innings to get adjusted to what I was seeing on the baseball field, because I'd never really seen a baseball game from a position like that in relation to a field that looked like the Polo Grounds.
Isn't that something?
It was really weird.
Yes, I should say. Yeah, I remember I was in New York in 47, and I saw Johnny Mize hit 2 home runs.
Oh, yeah.
Well, anyway, now you're back in the States, and you're headed for home.
Right.
And your family just was so overjoyed
Oh,
to
yeah.
have you back. And you hadn't suffered any sickness or injury or anything?
No, I was very fortunate. Not only that, well, going back to when I was a kid, I had asthma for a number of years, which I pretty much outgrew by the time I was 12 or so. But then I would say I was more susceptible to getting colds maybe than the average person. But after my experience in the Hurtgen Forest, must have done something to build up my immunity, because I hardly get colds anymore.
Oh, good for you.
So I came back in good shape, and overall, when I went into the service, when I graduated from high school, I still had some growing to do. I think I was maybe about 5'7", weighed 130 pounds. In that 4-month basic training period, where we worked hard, we ate hard, and all that,
Right.
I was up to about 5'11" and 150 pounds, and really in great shape.
Isn't that great?
And well, you asked for a funny story, and I don't know whether this would exactly fill the bill, but it's something that I always get a chuckle out of. During basic training, we were standing inspection one day, and our drill sergeant come down the line looking everybody over, and when he got to me, he said, after he looked at what he was looking at, he said, "Glas, 10 demerits." Well, my jaw dropped because I couldn't imagine what he was talking about.
Right.
And so he realized that, so he said, "You need a shave." Well, I had never shaved before in my life. That was my first shave.
You had peach fuzz. Oh, gosh, that is something.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah, you never forget things like that.
Yeah. So I kind of changed from a kid to a young man
Boy,
during the Army.
yeah, we grew up in a hurry
Yeah.
in the service. We really did. And that discipline and that everything was a plus.
That's right.
And as you have said, you enjoyed it. I
Yeah.
enjoyed my service too. You know, it was a great period of time. And people say, "Oh, you must have been scared and at sea and all that sort of thing." It was a great adventure.
Well, right, I agree. But as far as being scared, I'd have to say that I was, and I think most guys were,
Yes, of course.
scared.
Oh, sure.
And really, initially, you had a feeling, it was a combination of fear and loneliness and despair. But after a while, well, a couple things happened. One is you kind of got used to things, and
Yes.
that helped. But I think most important was that you came to the realization that there were other guys that were depending upon what you did.
Absolutely.
And it created this bond. And
It certainly did. And that's helped you throughout your life.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Well, you came back, you went to UC, got your degree, what, mechanical engineering?
Civil.
Or civil
Civil
engineering.
engineering, yeah.
So you're a builder, a highway builder and so forth.
Well, not a highway builder, but that, to me, that's one of the fascinating things about civil engineering. There's so many different
Yes,
parts of it. The part I went into basically has to do with structural design and construction.
Okay.
That's what I did.
And did you build Cincinnati buildings?
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. Not
For
the
example?
real big ones. The operation that I was involved with was primarily light industrial, that sort of thing.
Okay, all right. A local firm?
Yeah.
Anybody we know?
Well,
Dugan and Myers or
well, I
anybody?
know Dugan and Myers very well.
I'll bet you
Yeah.
do.
And it was interesting. I mean, they were involved in this Ascent building across
Yes.
the way in Kentucky.
Yeah.
Big article in the paper today about
Right,
that.
right.
Yeah, well, one of the companies I work for, Steelcraft Manufacturing Company.
Oh, sure.
Did you know them?
Up Sharonville.
Okay, and then another was Dave Steele in Lebanon, Ohio.
Mm-hmm.
And they were very close to Dugan and Myers.
Yes.
Fran
yes.
Dugan and I think it was Jerry Myers.
Right. Well, you've had a tremendous experience. How about your family here? You got married and had children?
And my wife and I are working on be 60 years
Well, good for you.
in November of
Wow.
this year.
How about that?
And we have 2 children,
Uh-huh.
son Andy, who lives in Chicago, and our daughter Susan lives here in Cincinnati. She's just getting ready to retire as a teacher in the Cincinnati public school system.
Isn't that something? How about that? Yeah. Well, my goodness, it's your remarkable story, your experience, your devotion, your dedication to your country, your family, your community. Walter, it's just, it's a great story. And there are millions like yours, but you know, a little over 16 million people served, Americans served in World War II. Mm-hmm. Now we're down to about 3 million. Yeah. And it's shocking to think about it, but time marches on, that's the way things are. But we've seen the building up of a great country after a war, and we helped other countries. We helped
absolutely.
Germany rebuild, and France and England, and you were a part of that, and we're greatly, greatly thankful to you for your service and your devotion, and Cincinnati is lucky to have a man such as you and your stature and your family position and so forth. We thank you very much for it.
Well, I appreciate everything you said.
Well, thank you.
I certainly enjoyed
And,
talking to you.
Well, it's been a great experience for me. You'll get a DVD of this.
Great.
The copy stays here in our library archives, and the copy goes to the Library of Congress in Washington, D.C. So you're in the history books now.
Great.
How about that?
How about that?